God damn. In 2020, Pushkin Press released When We Cease to Understand the World, the third book by Chilean writer Benjamín Labatut, and the first of his to be translated into English. It was a smash hit. It's a short, strange, amazing genre bender, a kind of fictionalized biography focusing on the big scientific discoveries of the 20th century and how they sort of connect with and map onto the big sort of changes and horrors of the two world wars. For me, I remember reading it and thinking that I hadn't really ever read something quite like it in terms of style and concept. Labatut is really amazing at zeroing in on these important physicists and scientists and unpacking and embellishing their personality and their biography and the things that drive them, and making these like leaps and connections between their work and other things happening in the world at the moment. Thanks to Labatut's own way of writing and also the translation by Adrian Nathan West, we get these amazing like images and turns of phrase that are able to make very esoteric scientific things interesting and strange and kind of engaging. Last year, we got a follow-up, which he actually wrote in English for the first time, is The Maniac. And again, it's a similar kind of thing. It's a fictionalized version of scientific biography, unusual style. It's super experimental. Basically, the novel has a kind of like a triptych structure. One central narrative, bookended at both ends. So the novel begins with an account of Paul Ehrenfest, who's an Austrian physicist, and his despair at the progress in his field and in the rise of Nazism in Europe. The final section of the novel is super up to date. It's a recounting of the famous contest between the DeepMind AI program and the world Go champion, Lee Sedol, and how, spoilers, the AI program was able to finally defeat and humiliate the world champion. The main part of the novel, the big middle chunk, is a biography of John von Neumann, sort of supernaturally talented Hungarian mathematician who was a key figure in lots of different scientific technological developments of the century. Things like computing, the development of nuclear weaponry, economic theories, game theory. He was so influential that he actually has a crater on the moon named after him. At the sort of the nub is von Neumann's involvement in the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, the development of the atomic bomb and the hydrogen bomb, and the sort of like big like scientific and ethical questions that came with it. Now, the book came out around the same time as Nolan's Oppenheimer, and you see in a lot of the press with the book, it's called things like a companion piece to Oppenheimer or a sort of alternative. This makes sense from like a marketing perspective. Like Oppenheimer is such a hit, it makes sense to kind of create that association. And the cover for the book also has a picture of a mushroom cloud. But actually, I think the book does a much better job of turning scientific discovery into narrative. It's much more interesting than Oppenheimer, which I thought was kind of dry and way too long and sort of had a lot of Nolan's storytelling deficiencies, things like unnecessarily complicated structure, a sort of self-seriousness, something that's in like a lot of Nolan's films, characters speaking in this abstract noun dialogue where everyone kind of sounds the same. There's not really a sense of like likeness or personality, and everyone's saying lines that seem written for like a trailer.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
It's all a little heavy, a little clumsy for me. And this is a big difference with The Maniac. Benjamín Labatut is one of the rare people who can write about academic and technical subjects and still keep the writing like light and mobile. There's this great sense of like movement and momentum, like sentences start and then they kind of like take off and you don't really know where they're going. I think the second page has this sentence, it's like half the page. It's just like clause after clause and it's escalating and making new associations. There's like a duringness to it. Like he'll jump between images or personalities or historical events, and there's just this sense of novelty. I mean, obviously, if you've read When We Cease to Understand the World, then the MANIAC isn't going to feel quite as new. And I do sort of wonder if maybe the massive scope of the book is stretching it out a little too much. Like When We Cease to Understand is like a really perfect length and helps it feel light and spectral. But the MANIAC is also kind of, I think, more ambitious in its coverage. One thing Labatut is really good at is jumping into the dysfunctional geniuses at the heart of all of these developments that he's interested in, and embellishing and sort of keying in on their obsessions and fears, and how the things that they create and discover and the changes that they make happen in the world are motivated by these things in themselves that are kind of like mysterious and hard to understand. And there is this sort of like, I don't know, like a sense of mystery or strangeness, I think, to the way he writes about the work of all these different scientists, the way that their kind of minds work. So much writing about science and technology is kind of like matter of fact and dry and kind of one note, like one tone. But Labatut's really good at like bringing in different tones, and he moves between like registers and different perspectives of different characters. He's able to bring in different kind of ways of speaking that feel more like, I don't know, biblical or prophecy, or sometimes like horror or sci-fi in the book. Now, of course, you have Oppenheimer, you have the Mushroom Cloud. The work on atomic weapons is at sort of the nub of the book, but it's only just like one part, and actually it swerves in the middle when it's telling von Neumann's story. In order to actually make these massive calculations that they needed for the hydrogen bomb, they couldn't just keep relying on like mathematicians in factory lines doing multiplications and additions over and over again. They need to build an electronic computing machine. Like they need to invent the computer. In the lab at Los Alamos, they end up building this big bulky device that they call a mathematical analyzer, numerical integrator, and automatic computer model. It's this lumbering pneumatic elephant. But von Neumann and some other visionary people were able to understand the potential of computing and how computing could evolve, and how something like artificial intelligence, the thing that would triumph in the book's last chapter, how that could develop. The book kind of switches and it becomes a gripping, sinister origin story. It's there at the start of the thing that we all live inside now. Labatut is very good at defamiliarization, so things that you're used to, or concepts or ideas, personalities that you think you kind of already know about. Under his eye, they sort of become unusual again, and you can kind of appreciate their novelty and their strangeness. I mean, with something like AI over the past couple of years or so, there's been so much written about it, but I feel like we're just reading the same like 4 or 5 articles like over and over again, and we're sort of like weirdly numb to the discourse around it. But Labatut is able to zoom out and place the development of AI on a much longer kind of timeline. When you read his stuff, you feel like you're kind of seeing these things for the first time. You know, there's no one that really writes like him. The more we all get kind of subsumed in this stuff, the more we need the ability to actually like see what is happening and find kind of languages to speak about them. And I'll see you in the next one.